An ancient text, expelled from the official Bible, describes 200 celestial beings descending upon a mountain. Their names were erased, their crimes silenced, yet their traces remain visible among us. Popular tradition speaks of a single devil, one fall, one enemy cast down from the heights of heaven. But the scriptures and the apocryphal texts reveal something much more disturbing and far older than imagined. There were 4 names, 4 fallen princes, each with a specific dominion over humanity created by God. What the Church taught for centuries is merely a shadow of the complete truth hidden within these manuscripts. For the celestial rebellion was not a singular act, but a chain of betrayals that extended throughout the ages. And the question that few dare to ask hangs suspended in the air of the world's oldest temples. If God expelled them from heaven, then where are these beings now who once beheld his radiant face? The answer demands descending into the most forgotten texts and reading between the lines what doctrine preferred to silence. There are names buried in ancient archives that the official liturgy almost never pronounces aloud today. That careful silence is not coincidental, for what is silenced is often precisely what the soul needs to know. Before time, before dust, even before the first human breath, God created the angels of heaven. They were pure spirits, messengers, guardians, and warriors, formed to serve and worship the Creator eternally. Some shone brighter than others, endowed with a beauty, wisdom, or power that elevated them above the rest. These were the archangels, the commanders of the celestial legions who guarded the order of the entire universe. Each had their rank, their mission, their exact place within the perfect hierarchy of the divine celestial court. Heaven, far from being a uniform place, was a hierarchical palace where each rank had its mission and its light. However, not all angels remained faithful to the will of the one who had given them existence. Some succumbed to pride, others to envy, and a few to an ambition so terrible that it shook the heavens. They decided to challenge divine authority, to turn away from the light and plunge forever into the deep darkness. These are the fallen angels, and Scripture mentions 4 names that stand out above the entire legion: Lucifer, Semyaza, Azazel, and Beelzebub, 4 princes whose destinies continue to weave the sin of the present world. Each bore a distinct dominion, a specific wound that still bleeds over the body of all humanity. The first of them, the most known, the most feared, was also the closest to the throne of the Most High God. His name meant bearer of light, and Christian tradition describes him as the most beautiful among the angels. It is said that he was in charge of celestial music, directing the songs of worship before the Creator. His voice, according to the ancients, was capable of moving the spheres and leading the angelic choirs to pure praise. But Lucifer was not content with his position, nor with the glory that had been granted to him from the beginning. In the secrecy of his heart, he schemed something monstrous, something that no created being had ever dared to think before. Pride, according to ancient theologians, was the first sin, the initial crack through which the shadow entered. And that crack did not arise in human dust, but in a luminous mind that gazed upon itself too much. He wanted to be equal to God, or perhaps superior, to sit upon the clouds and claim eternal worship for himself. The prophet Isaiah captured his words and left them written as a warning for all future generations. "I will ascend to heaven," he said. "I will raise my throne above the stars. I will be like the Most High in all his glory." He who had been light became shadow, and the shadow is now the finest imitation of that lost light. And then, he persuaded a multitude of angels to join his rebellion against the eternal divine order. Some followed him out of fear, others out of admiration for his beauty, and others because they too desired to rule. A war broke out that no human eye has seen, a battle fought in dimensions that escape reason. God sent the archangel Michael and his legions to confront the dragon and his already lost rebellious followers. The Book of Revelation describes it with solemn words that still resonate in temples around the world today. There was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon did not prevail any longer. No place was found for them in heaven, and they were cast down to earth along with their fallen and defeated leader. Thus, Lucifer, the bearer of light, transformed into Satan, a word that means adversary or eternal accuser. Since that day, he has devoted himself to tempting men and leading them away from the path of divine salvation. Scripture calls him the father of lies, God of this age, and a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour always. His power does not reside in visible strength, but in cunning, in twisted words, and in poisoned promises. Where man seeks shortcuts to achieve glory, there precisely Satan finds fertile ground to sow. But Lucifer did not fall alone, nor was his rebellion the only betrayal recorded in the sacred texts of the past. While Lucifer reigned in the outer darkness, another, more silent rebellion was brewing in the heights. It was not an open war like the first, but a subtle betrayal, a fall disguised as a sacred mission. There existed another angel, whose name the canonical Bible almost forgets, but which an ancient text preserves in detail. The Book of Enoch, apocryphal and mysterious, reveals the story of Semyaza, chief of the so-called celestial watchers. His name meant the one who sees God, and he was considered the wisest in the secrets of eternal heaven. The Watchers were a special group of angels sent by God to earth for a sacred and unique mission. They were to watch over men, teach them noble arts, and guide them along the paths of divine wisdom. Their task was to observe without interfering, instruct without contamination, and stay pure while serving humanity. But something terrible happened when they descended upon the world and set their eyes upon the daughters of men. Those pure beings surrendered, step by step, to an earthly desire that should never have touched their immortal nature. They saw them as beautiful, desired them ardently, and completely forgot the purpose of their celestial mission. They said to one another, "Let us choose wives from among the daughters of men, and soon conceive children with them." Semyaza, their leader, felt fear and said, "I dread you won't fulfill this, and I alone will bear this heavy sin." Then they all swore under a common curse, committing themselves not to abandon the plan they had conceived. There were 200 angels who descended upon Mount Hermon, sealing a pact that would change history. That summit, according to the account, became the threshold through which celestial corruption entered the entire world. The very name of Hermon evokes in Hebrew a root linked to both consecration and curse at the same time. They took wives from among the daughters of men and revealed the forbidden secrets of eternal heaven to them. They taught them astrology, magic, knowledge of plants, weapon making, and the art of fine jewelry. But these sacred knowledges, in corrupt hands, produced not light, but violence, corruption, and impiety. The entire earth began to fill with shadows, sin, and works that deeply offended the eternal Creator. From the union between the Watchers and human women, unnatural beings known as the Nephilim were born. They were giants of colossal stature, hybrid creatures that devoured men and the animals of the field. The Book of Enoch describes how these giants consumed everything that humanity could produce with its labor. That insatiable hunger revealed the very nature of their origin, an impossible crossing between the eternal and the mortal. When there was no more food, they turned against men themselves, devouring them without any mercy or measure. They sinned against the birds, against the beasts, against the reptiles, against the fish, against every living creature. They drank each other's blood, and the entire earth cried out to heaven for the violence poured out upon it. The ancient codices narrate how the very air became heavy, saturated with blood, fear, and blasphemies. No living creature escaped the horror. Not even the tamest animals found refuge on the earth. The cities rose like useless fortresses against creatures that measured like towers and devoured without satisfaction. The groaning of the ground and the cries of the victims pierced the spears and reached the throne of the Most High. God beheld the wickedness of men and the betrayal of the fallen angels, and he regretted his creation. Then he decided to send the universal flood to wipe from the face of the earth all flesh corrupted by evil. Only Noah and his family, righteous and obedient, would be preserved to perpetuate the seed of future humanity. But the punishment was not limited to men. It also reached the watchers who had provoked the general ruin. God sent Raphael with a terrible order to bind the rebels and cast them into an abyss of eternal darkness. The text describes in stark terms the fate of Semyaza and his associates, condemned to a prison with no return. Bind them for 70 generations beneath the hills of the earth until the final day of supreme divine judgment. There they will wait, chained in darkness until the eternal fire consumes all that rebelled against God. Thus Semyaza was silenced, but his children, the Nephilim, left a terrible echo that still resonates among the shadows. For although their bodies perished in the flood, their spirits remained wandering the world without rest. These evil spirits seek bodies to possess and souls to corrupt, as ancient Jewish tradition asserts. Some ancient masters maintained that every dark temptation of man carries the invisible trace of these beings. Semyaza, therefore, represents perverted wisdom, impious curiosity, and unrestrained lust of the heart. His sin was not ignorance, but knowledge applied against the divine order, science transformed into a wound. But among the watchers, there was one who stood out above the others for his audacity and refined cruelty. His name was Azazel, a word that means the one whom God strengthens, and he was considered the bravest of all. He is described as a formidable warrior, skilled in the art of war and in the hidden secrets of metals. The Book of Enoch points him out as the one who taught men to make swords, knives, shields, and armor. He revealed the secrets of metals hidden in the earth and the dark art of working hard iron and bronze. Before his descent, men did not know organized war, nor the blade capable of spilling blood en masse. Each spear, forged according to his teaching, bore, unknowingly, the invisible mark of celestial rebellion. And each battle fought with those weapons multiplied the pain upon the earth that God had created for peace. He also taught women to paint their eyes with antimony, to dye their hair, and to wear precious stones. He introduced the use of bracelets, ornaments, color dyes, and all kinds of adornments to seduce and deceive. Thus Azazel sowed 3 terrible seeds in the world: armed violence, vanity, and carnal idolatry. Customs became corrupted, paths were perverted, and fornication spread throughout all nations. God considered him the main responsible for the wickedness that had contaminated the children of men at that time. And then he gave a specific order to the archangel Raphael, an order that still resonates in ancient sacred texts. Go, bind Azazel hand and foot, and cast him into the darkness in a desert place called Dudael, secret. Make an opening in the earth, throw rough and sharp stones upon him, and cover him with complete, eternal darkness. Cover his face so that he does not see the light, and let him remain there until the great day of the final judgment. On that day, he will be cast into the fire, and the wickedness he spread across creation will be extinguished with him. There, according to ancient rabbis, his cry continued to resonate beneath the sand, awaiting the fulfillment of the ages. But the story of Azazel does not end in the depths of the desert, for his name reappears in another scripture. The Book of Leviticus describes an ancient and mysterious ritual celebrated on the holiest day of the Jewish calendar. The high priest would take 2 male goats and cast lots over them before the sacred tent of meeting. One lot was for the Lord, while the other was destined for a disturbing and feared name, Azazel himself. The Lord's goat was sacrificed as an offering for sin, and its blood sprinkled upon the mercy seat. The other, the one for Azazel, was sent alive into the wilderness, symbolically carrying all the sins of the chosen people. The high priest would lay his hands upon its head and confess over it all the iniquities of the people of Israel. And then he would release it into the arid wilderness, sending it to the place where the eternal chained angel dwelled. This ritual marked the invisible boundary between the sacred and the profane, between God and the spirit of the dark abyss. Some scholars argue that Azazel was merely the name of a place, a word without personal or real entity. But other teachers maintain that it was precisely the fallen angel, the hidden enemy, in the eternal desert. He who represents armed violence, seductive vanity, and the idolatry that distances man from the Creator. The mere mention of his name in the sacred text reveals how deep his shadow was over the chosen people. Every year, on the Day of Atonement, Israel symbolically remembered that evil had a name and a face. There remains yet a fourth name, the strangest and most repulsive of all the fallen princes in the biblical account. His name was Beelzebub, an expression that in ancient language literally means Lord of the Filthy Flies. He is described as the most disgusting of the rebellious angels, associated with the corruption of flesh and death. Jewish tradition asserts that Beelzebub was worshipped as the chief god by the Philistines, eternal enemies of Israel. His cult centered in the city of Ekron, where the Philistines offered sacrifices seeking favor or healing. They believed he had the power to send plagues or to heal them, and that he reigned as sovereign over all demons. Where there was decay and disease, the ancients said, there descended his flies as messengers of horror. His cult fed on fear, for men prefer to worship what they fear rather than trust in what they cannot see. And so Beelzebub raised altars not for his glory, but for the terror he sowed among the neighboring peoples of Israel. A biblical story reveals the direct conflict between this dark idol and the true God of the ancient Hebrews. The Philistines, after a battle, had captured the Ark of the Covenant and brought it to the temple of their god Dagon. But every morning they found Dagon fallen down, first prostrate, then shattered, before the sacred divine Ark. Then a terrible plague fell upon the city of Ashdod, striking down both small and great men alike. The inhabitants sent the Ark to the city of Gath, but there too the hand of the Lord was felt strongly. They moved it to Ekron, the very heart of the cult of Beelzebub, hoping that their god would finally dominate it there. But upon the ark's arrival, the Ekronites cried out in panic, claiming that the God of Israel would kill them too. Men were dying, others were afflicted with tumors, and the outcry of the city rose to the distant and dark heaven. The Philistines understood that no sacrifice to Beelzebub could stop the judgment of the true God of Israel. They called their priests and diviners and resolved to return the ark accompanied by a special offering of gold. They made 5 golden tumors and 5 golden mice, one for each of the defeated and wounded princes of the Philistines. The ark returned to Israel, and Beelzebub was exposed as a powerless idol before the true sovereign of the cosmos. That episode proved that no fallen angel, no matter how feared, could withstand the power of the eternal God. The conflict between the ark and Beelzebub was not merely military, but a collision between 2 opposing spiritual orders. But the name of Beelzebub does not disappear with the Philistine episode, but reappears throughout the New Testament. The centuries had transformed the Philistine idol into an even darker figure within the later Hebrew imagination. He was no longer just a foreign god, but the collective face of all demonic powers, hostile to the chosen people. There, the Pharisees, religious leaders of the Jews, identify him as the very prince of the dark demons. When Jesus cast out a blind and mute, demon-possessed man, the crowd was astonished at the manifested power of the Lord. But the Pharisees, filled with envy, accused Jesus of acting by the power of Beelzebub and not by the true God. Knowing their thoughts, Jesus responded with a logic that silenced his accusers definitively at that moment. A kingdom divided against itself will fall, and a house divided cannot stand, he warned. If Satan casts out Satan, he is divided against himself. How then will his kingdom stand in time? If I, on the contrary, cast out demons by the Spirit of God, then the eternal kingdom has come upon you. Thus, Beelzebub was exposed as the fallen angel who represents disease, impurity, and deep idolatry. He is the Lord of the Flies, a symbol of decay, and at the same time, the prince of the dark demonic legions. Under his shadow extends all spiritual disease that disguises itself as well-being and feeds on the forgetfulness of God. Wherever man worships the body more than the Creator, there the flies of his dark kingdom settle invisibly. These are the 4 fallen angels whose names Scripture preserves as a warning to all humanity. Lucifer, the bearer of light who became Satan, the adversary who always tempts and accuses men. Semyaza, the one who saw God, transformed into the chief of the chained watchers beneath the eternal dark hills. Azazel, the one whom God strengthens, turned lord of plagues and teacher of violence, vanity, and human idolatry. And Beelzebub, the lord of the flies, the dark prince of demons who besieged Israel and the entire world. They are enemies of God, enemies of his people, and responsible for countless evils poured out upon all creation. But none of them holds the final word. None will escape the punishment that has been eternally destined for them. Scripture reveals the ultimate fate of these beings, written before the foundation of the present and visible world. An angel will descend from heaven with the key to the abyss and a great golden chain held in his powerful and firm hand. He will seize the dragon, the ancient serpent, who is the adversary and Satan, and bind him for 1,000 years complete. He will cast him into the abyss, seal him, and shut him up. preventing him from deceiving the nations ever again. And although he will be released for a brief time at the end, his fate is already sealed forever and will never change. He will rise with his armies over the breadth of the earth, surround the camp of the saints and the beloved divine city. Fire will fall from heaven to consume them, and the deceiver will be cast into the lake of eternal fire and brimstone. There will also be the beast and the false prophet, tormented day and night for ages upon ages, without rest. That lake is not a poetic metaphor, according to the texts, but a real destiny prepared before time. And in it will be consumed all rebellion, all lies, every shadow that once dared to challenge the first light. Therefore, although they now walk as shadows among men, their defeat is written with indelible and firm ink. Lucifer remains as an adversary, roaming the world, sowing lies and pride in human hearts today. Semyaza lies chained beneath the hills, awaiting with his watchers the day of the final and terrible judgment. Azazel sleeps among the stones of the desert, covered in darkness, until the eternal fire awakens him at last. Beelzebub acts among the nations, infecting them with plagues, idolatry, and spiritual disease to those who invoke him. But all of them share the same destiny, an eternal prison prepared from the beginning for the rebels. The initial question finally finds its answer among the ancient verses of the sacred texts of the past. The fallen angels did not disappear, did not evaporate, were not forgiven nor reintegrated into the celestial legions. Some wander freely, others lie chained, but all await the same irrevocable verdict from the Most High. Their influence remains subtle yet powerful over every generation that passes through this mortal realm. Understanding this forever changes the reading of the scriptures and the way one observes the heart itself. Knowing their names is to understand the hidden origin of many temptations that the human soul faces each day. Perverted wisdom, armed violence, seductive vanity, sickly idolatry, all have a face. And behind each face is a name, and behind each name is an angel who once beheld the eternal God. Lucifer whispers in the palaces of power, where pride dresses itself in legitimate ambition and despises the humble. Semyaza blows upon the academies of knowledge, where knowledge separates from love and becomes a cruel weapon. Azazel silently forges the weapons of every war and designs the mirrors where human vanity contemplates itself. Beelzebub spreads the invisible pestilence, that which is called despair, weariness, body idolatry, or pleasure. These four strategies intertwine in every age, forming an invisible net that envelops entire nations. No culture, no empire, no civilization has ever been free from the distant echo of those four voices. Each has its hidden throne, each reaps its victims, but all prepare for the day of definitive ruin. The story of their fall is not a myth. It is a mirror where humanity can recognize the roots of its tragedy. What seemed a distant tale then becomes a key to understanding the present and its tensions. For each age embodies the ancient battle in its own way, and each soul decides, consciously or not, on which side to fight. For what fell in heaven seeks to fall also into the soul of man, silently repeating the rebellion within. That is why the ancient sages meditated on these texts with trembling, knowing that each word contained a warning. And that is why, even today, reading these names attentively is to peer into the edge where light and shadow separate. Each generation faces these four princes under new names, but always with the same ancient strategy. Lucifer promises greatness to whoever offers him their will. Semyaza promises knowledge to whoever renounces humility. Azazel promises dominion to whoever wields iron and the pleasure of a made-up face. Beelzebub promises immediate relief. However, behind each promise is an invisible chain that slowly closes around the soul of the unwary. That is the warning that traverses the centuries, the silent light that burns within each ancient and forgotten manuscript. Recognizing the enemy is already half the victory, the masters said, and naming him correctly is to begin to defeat him. That is why these 4 names were preserved, not as a historical curiosity, but as a spiritual map for the ages. Every reader who finds them gazes into Mount Hermon's threshold, where the choice between light and shadow endures. But also, in every generation, men and women rise who learn to discern, to resist, and to overcome. This is the story that canonical texts hint at, and the apocryphal ones reveal with chilling and ancient details. A story of light turned into shadow, of privilege turned into condemnation, of glory turned into eternal chains. And that discernment begins always by listening to the ancient voices that modern haste preferred to bury. If this journey through the celestial secrets has awakened your curiosity, subscribe to discover more hidden mysteries.